Hello, and welcome to Pivotal Moments HQ, a podcast sharing, exploring, and celebrating stories of change through mindset and wellness and their impact on relationships. We are all agents of change and have the power to pivot at any point, at any time. I'm your host, Melissa Robena, along with my co-host, Siria Gutierrez. On this episode, we discuss integration of the self and how it is necessary for engaging in the world as your authentic self.
So on this episode, we want to talk about integration.
And what we mean by that is the different personas that I think that we each hold. Like I think I mentioned in previous episodes that I have my business persona and then I have my individual persona. And how do we integrate the different levels or layers of ourselves to be one whole human being?
Yes. And I think even earlier today, before we started recording, you mentioned that you were hoping that by taking today off, which congratulations, I'm very proud of you for doing that.
Thank you.
A day off in the middle of the week, y'all. Like, I mean, she's walking the walk and talking the talk. I fucking love it. So you're taking off, but what do you think taking the day off like today will do for your integration of your business and your personal self?
It just allows me to disconnect from my business persona, which for listeners, you know, they know that I work constantly. So I'm always in that mindset. So being able to remove myself and actually not check emails, which I really did not do today, it allowed me to just be myself. And it was just so nice to just disconnect from that part. But my goal, though, is to be able to bring, because I noticed that each persona that I have is quite different. My persona at work is very assertive, very dominant, and very detail oriented. And not to say that some of those characteristics don't show themselves in my individual life, but in my individual life, I'm a lot more passive, amiable. I know you probably are thinking to yourself, Siria, like, where's this amiable side? But it's deep, deep down in there. But what I'd like to be able to do is to meld those two together, because I think that I could go further in my career and I could go further in my personal life if I bring those two together. So like in my personal life, for example, you know, we've talked about family roles and establishing boundaries and how, you know, I'm a people pleaser. But I think that if I can bring that business persona in that's a lot more assertive and dominant, then I could find more confidence in saying no to individuals that I have a hard time saying no to now.
So what I'm hearing is that you have a certain range, and that you feel that your more assertive, dominant range is in your business persona, and your amiable, fictional.
It's not fictional. It is really there.
Okay, so but your more amiable, more pleasing side is your deeply personal self.
Absolutely.
Okay, so looking at that range, you know, I think there's probably more range in there, because
absolutely.
one of the things you didn't mention was playfulness, and like you're actually very playful and silly, but it's something that I think that, or at least I perceive that you don't want to show in your business side.
I feel that I'm starting to become a lot more confident with myself. And that was something just actually recently that I've discovered, that I'm slowly starting to build my self-worth. And because I've built that self-worth, I feel more comfortable in my role within the company. I'm very steadfast in the relationships that I've formed with colleagues. And so that playfulness is actually starting to seep into my professional life. And I like it because, you know, I make my colleagues laugh when we're on the call. And I like that. And it just helps to lighten the mood. It makes work almost seem like play. And so I really like that, you know, I'm seeing what happens when I bring my personal self into my business. It's really nice.
It is nice, right? Because I think that even while we're talking about playfulness, it is something that, you know, we've talked about it on the podcast, but it's also something that we've facilitated in workshops with different companies, and just seeing how people can bring that out. It's like you've got that full range within you at all times. So I'm just thinking, what would help you try to bring in more of that, you know, integration as you want it, or is it okay that you are broad.
I think that there are certain situations that call on each, and this is something that I learned in counseling, which is try as you might, you can't change your personality. Like there's certain characteristics that we have that are so ingrained into us that if we tried to remove it, that would actually just change who we are. And I'm not trying to change who I am. So yeah, my attention to detail or my assertiveness might come in handy in certain parts of my personal life. So yeah, I could flex that muscle if I need to. Just like I can flex my playfulness in my work life if I need to. So I think it's just being aware and confident and understanding when each of those different aspects are needed in the different lives I hold.
Well, and it isn't necessarily lives in the
There's
different
the different
roles.
roles I have. Yeah.
Yeah.
Now I know that you do a lot of, coaching and stuff like that. And your mantra is, because listeners, as you may know by now, City is an attorney. So you said lawyering is a skill set, not an
identity.
Not an identity. Now, what do you mean by that?
So, I mean, I came to this paradigm shift earlier this year, and it really has to do with the fact that everything that I've learned as a lawyer, they are skills. They are not me necessarily as a person. And when I was able to remove the lawyer as part of my identity and just no, these are the skill sets that I've learned and really remove it from who I am, then I didn't have to internalize the good or the bad that comes with being a lawyer. It's easier for me to say, oh, well, that case didn't go our way, or that case did go our way. And I can credit it to, okay, well, this has to do with the skills that I have, or this has to do with the fact that it was a shitty case, and knowing that it wasn't because I'm bad as a person or because I'm so good. Like it brought my ego down, but it also brought me up in a way that I don't have to internalize everything that's bad. They're all experiences, and I get to learn from all of that and be able to grow. And so I think that knowing that for myself helped me with the integration, but I think I was already there beforehand. I very much am conscious of, I want to be the same person in every single space that I show up in, and not have you be like, oh, well, you're different when you're on the phone, or you're doing this and that. It's like, no, if I'm putting on a different hat, if I'm putting on my lawyer hat, well, you're there because you have a legal problem that you want me to solve. Okay, great. I can do that, but I'm still at the core the same person. I'm just using those skills as a lawyer. Now, if you're coming to me as a coaching client, I'm going to put on a different hat that's very different from my lawyer skills, and just knowing, okay, here's where that is, and you can make those distinctions. But at the end of the day, I'm still myself in every single one of those settings. So I'm going to talk about my intuition. I'm going to talk about the things that light me up. I'm going to not hold back on saying things because they're not going to be popular. I may say things because I need to, no, I don't want to say I won't say them. I may be more cautious in saying certain things in certain settings, but knowing, okay, well, why am I being cautious here? So, because I'm not dumb. Like, I want to make sure that I'm not just saying things to be hurtful or to be argumentative. And really that's just aligned with with how I am and with my values. And I found that once I started really this path of full integration, instead of saying I have to be this way outside, or I have to be this way with the squad, I have to be this way with my supernatural friends. When I was doing that, that was really exhausting, because then you're like, oh, okay, well, I can only stay in this box. My box is huge, y'all. I'm like fully like range, just I'm all over the place. Like there's no box that can contain me.
I've tried.
Many have tried, and they have all failed. But I tried, and that's the sad part. I was doing it to myself, where I thought, okay, I need to be this way in order to be respected. I need to be this way in order to fit in. Like, fuck fitting in. I don't want to fit in. I want to be my full self in every single space that I'm in, and not have to minimize myself or try to make myself something that I'm not. So one of my favorite lyrics from Fall Out Boy is, I became such a weird shape from trying to fit in. And I was like,
so they're very powerful words.
Yes, they have such great lyrics. But that was one of the things, like, I became such a weird shape from trying to fit in. And that's really what it was. Like, I don't need to fit in. I just need to be myself. And when I'm my full self in every single space that I'm in, it actually gives other people permission to do the same thing.
I think as I'm listening to you talk, I was trying to think, well, why am I so divergent? And have these different roles that I live out. And I think that it comes down to just the fact that I felt like I needed to compete. And I'm always competing mostly against myself, but I felt like I always needed to prove myself. And I know that we had an episode on imposter syndrome, and that episode really resonated with me because especially when you don't see yourself in the field. Again, I'm one of the youngest Latinas in appreciative inquiry.
Probably the only one,
to be honest. And so when you don't see people like yourself, I felt like I was there out of luck. And so I didn't want people to say like, oh, well, she's where she's at because of luck or whatever. I wanted it to be out of merit. So I worked exceptionally hard, and I wanted to compete with others that had their doctorate and I don't have my doctorate. And, so I think that kind of need to compete, that need to be assertive, that need to be heard, that need to be validated. I think that is why my business persona is so assertive. And let's look at the numbers and, let's dominate.
Super analytical.
Extremely analytical. Mm-hmm. Whereas my personal side, I mean, if you've listened to the episodes, you know that I was the caretaker. So I was very much a people pleaser. It was very hard for me to say no and to establish healthy boundaries. And so the dichotomy between the two, it was like oil and water. Mm-hmm. And so, but I find that I'm happiest when I can be my full self, when I can, flex my analytical side, when I can flex my playfulness. And so looking at you, it seems like, or just in listening to you, it seems as if you've been able to do that all along. So what do you think has allowed you or enabled you to bring your full self to all that you do?
I don't think I have been doing it all along. I think it's something that has come with intentionality and wanting to really just accept all of myself. Because I feel like there were certain parts of myself that maybe I was holding back on in certain settings because I didn't want the baggage that came with it. So the first example that comes to mind is I didn't tell people I was a lawyer. Like, it would not be what I would start with. And I don't lead with it now, but I'm not trying to hide it now. If it comes up in a conversation, great. If not, like, doesn't matter to me. But there was a point in time where it was the last thing I wanted to come up, because then all of a sudden it would be, at least my perception of it was, oh, here's all the baggage that comes along with saying that you're an attorney. And that's what I experienced as a baby lawyer early on. So I was separating that part of myself, and I didn't want people to know. It's like, okay, well, it isn't necessarily a part of my identity, but it is something that I've done for a long time, is a significant part of my livelihood and has been my entire adult life. So now I just know, hey, I don't want to lead with that. I want to lead with being a mental health advocate. That's something that is much more important to me in terms of how I'm perceived and what I can offer, because I feel like having those titles and stuff can really just blur things and can put different things on people that they don't necessarily want or see for themselves. And so as I've come to this point of, okay, you know what, lawyers can be creative. I can be creative. Even today, I decided that I was going to go really sassy with my makeup, and I made a TikTok video. I haven't posted on it yet, but it's about being a professional woman. You can be a professional woman and have tattoos. You can be a professional woman and wear makeup. You can be a professional woman and decide not to wear makeup. Like, you can do whatever the fuck you want. It does not matter, but it's how you feel, right? If that's how you're going to show up your best, do it. And so I know that for myself, once I fully allowed myself to have all of these different parts and be able to talk about, the fact that I'm such a, fangirl or, super geek or whatever you want to call it, like, yeah, I'm going to own those things. And I think also by owning them, I keep the power, as opposed to other people being like, oh, well, you're such a nerd. It's like, yeah, I am.
I own that shit.
Mm-hmm. Right. And so I'm curious for you, though, what makes you want to integrate yourself? Because you're at an awareness piece now, knowing that, hey, these things are separate. So what is making you want to go, I don't want to be separate anymore?
I think it's actually a lot of the work that I've been doing in counseling. So I've been told that I'm blunt, and I've heard this from people in my family. I know you're shocked, Sidia.
I'm floored.
So I've had individuals in my like family members, my spouse, say that, wow, like what you said was mean. And I don't mean for it to come out mean, but I think that growing up, especially in my personal life, I've been mulled over. And so I felt like I needed to be blunt in order for my voice to be heard. But in the field of appreciative inquiry in which I work, we talk about positive reframing. So instead of, being harsh, there are other ways of saying what I want to say without losing its meaning. And I think that was where there was this disconnect for me. I would say things, and while I may have gotten my point across, I might have hurt someone's feelings in the process. And that's not my intention. I want to feel heard. I want to have a conversation that can be a dialogue between me and that other person. And being blunt, I think that because they would get hurt, they would shut off, and I wouldn't be able to engage in those conversations that I wanted to. So, but in my personal life, and this is what my counselor pointed out to me, in your professional life, she's like, how are you able to get things across? And I was like, well, I would just say it differently. And she's like, well, why don't you translate that into your personal life? And I was like, I never thought about that before. And so I have this skill set in my professional life. Why can't I bring it into my personal life? And I think that was like when the awareness started to, kind of turn on for me in terms of, okay, well, how can I bring the best of what I do in both worlds together to become just a better human being?
Mm-hmm. And I think that goes to being intentional about how you show up in spaces, right? You want that same skill to be everywhere that you're doing it. And so as you were talking, one of the things that came up for me is this quote I heard: honesty without tact is cruelty. I'm like, yeah, because you can be honest all day long, but if you're just doing it to do it and not thinking about the consequences or how it's coming out or the setting or how it could be perceived, yeah, you're just being cruel. And maybe that's not your intent, but it's certainly something to keep in mind. So if you wanted to come off, is it that you want to come off softer in a certain space, or you just want to be more assertive in your family space?
No, it's the fact that I'm learning that there are ways for me to reframe. And I think that kind of stepping back, I was always afraid that if I wasn't blunt, that someone could say, well, you didn't say it that way. Like they would try to find like the gray in whatever it was that I was saying. And I needed it to be black and white, so there was no confusion in terms of my intent. Mm-hmm. But there are ways, if I stop and I'm mindful about what it is, the message I'm trying to convey, there are multiple ways I can say it. And I don't have to worry about, I'm in a different place now mentally too, where I feel like my voice is being heard. And I know that what I have to say is worth something, is meaningful. And I'm no longer surrounded by people that tore me down. And I'm getting to choose who I surround myself with. And the people that I've chosen to surround myself with are very open and receptive, and they want to hear what I have to say. They don't want my voice to be stifled like others in the past may have. So
and they want to hear your full voice.
They want to hear my full voice. Yeah. Mm-hmm. But I also too need to work on changing my habits of the past, because my habits of the past, it's easy to revert back to what I was used to. So this is definitely a new skill set where I'm still able to convey the message that I want, but just being mindful of the environment, of the people that I'm talking to, because I can say the same thing, but just in a better way. Does that make sense?
It does make sense. So you want to...
I'm not losing the message. I'm just changing how I say it.
Right. Because again, it goes back to being intentional. You want to be intentional with how you're saying it, as opposed to just talking for talking's sake. Like, in knowing, okay, using all of the information that you have to craft your message in a way where it will actually be received.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Because I've noticed that when I reframe it and say it in a positive way, one that invites discussion, I get a lot further with with the conversation with that individual, and we get to co-construct a preferred future together. So if it's something that, you know, if it's a disagreement that I have with my spouse, for example, instead of coming at and attacking, like say, you never listen to me, you know what? Instead, why not reframe and say, I feel most connected to you when we're engaging in really good conversations, you know, and how might we create more of those instances or experiences together? Now I'm inviting him into the conversation, and together we're able to create dialogue around how might we create more of these experiences together. So
do you find that when you reframe it that way and you're having the conversation with Vince, that he catches on that you've reframed it? Or because I feel like it's definitely happened with Matt where he's like, did you just learn this in counseling? Like,
at first, but no, I think it was, well, I'd always practiced appreciative inquiry on him all the time, but I think it's just going to counseling and just being, like you said earlier, intentional. I'm really trying to work on how I communicate in all aspects of my life. And that really boils down to looking at and being mindful of the language I'm using when I'm constructing my conversations. Not saying that I'm sitting there before each conversation trying to map it out and be like, okay, well, Siria is coming over, so, you know, I want to talk about this. It's just looking at the language and how might I reframe it. If there is a difficult conversation that I'm wanting to have in my personal life, I will think about it for days and weeks. Sometimes I'll even talk with you about it and my counselor for sure. But start to, one, let the emotions subside, because sometimes when we're in the heat of the moment, that can cloud things. And I think that was a mistake I had made before. But it's also to just what is it that I really want out of this situation? What is the ideal? And let me operate from that lens to construct my conversation.
Mm-hmm. So it sounds like you want to be an AI practitioner all the time.
I like what it brings. I've seen it happen on an organizational level, but I've also seen what it can really make conversations flourish. And that's what I want in my life. I want to flourish. And I don't just want to flourish. I want the people around me to flourish. And I can do that through engaging in conversations that invite them to be heard, just like I wanted to be heard. I want them to be heard. So I think that that's why I want to integrate both of myselves together, because there are different aspects of my life that people can respect and admire. And I have strengths in each of those roles that I possess. And how might I create more experiences where the strengths on each side come together to bring my full self, my full potential forward.
Mm-hmm. I like that. I think that there's a lot of room for playing with it and massaging and seeing, okay, well, what is it that I want to do? And then you don't have to think about it. Oh, I have to put on my hat over here. So I think part of it is with being professionals, right? So here on the podcast, we swear. Okay. Guess what? A lot of professionals swear. Mm-hmm. It's not actually a big deal. Am I going to swear in court? Probably not. I know what the setting is, but that doesn't mean that I necessarily have to change myself completely. Like, I can still get heated in the moment if that's what it needs to be. And so just thinking about the full integration of the self is, once you've explored all of these different aspects of yourself, and mind you, they continue to explore, right? There's different things that I'm growing in. I've got my growth edges and whatnot. But at least I'm showing up fully. And I've found that when I show up fully, people want more of it. People want to engage with me more. Like, if I think, and I've seen, you can see that difference when somebody's not fully showing up. You can at least I could tell. Is that something that you could see when somebody's like holding back? Or,
well, I think, and just listening to you, I think, because I was about to ask you, why do you feel integration is so important? But you kind of like hit the nail on the head, because it really is. When you're fully integrated, I feel like that's when you're truly authentic. Mm-hmm. Because you are bringing your full self to the table.
Absolutely. I think that's the key. Integration is bringing out your full authentic self in any space, and then knowing it's not going to be for everybody. And I talk about that all the time, right? I'm not for everybody. That's okay. That is all right. But the people who are for me are going to be for me. And the people that I'm going to be for 110%, because I'm seeing their full selves, flaws and all. What is the point of me holding back? At some points, when I did hold back, it was more detrimental to me, I feel, in relationships, and in feeling like I put myself in a different stratosphere. No, I'm not. I'm not any different than anybody else. I'm my own self with my own experiences and baggage and all the other crap that comes along with being me. But I'm the only one, and I'm unique in that regard, and so are you, and so is everybody else. And so really embracing that integration is embracing your true authentic self. We want to hear from you. What benefits have you experienced from being your authentic self? Let us know on our Instagram or our private Facebook group, Pivotal Moments HQ. We want to thank our producer and music director, Ron Johnson. This has been an Astronomicus DMR production. Thank you for listening. Remember, it's never too late, and you're right on time.